Hi, I'm Chelsea, and we're on to month 2 of the Queen of Diamonds. So we hope you really enjoyed the first month. It's been really fun seeing all of your different variations of this and your different interpretations of the fabric and some old out of print stuff and new things and putting your spin on each of those blocks. So keep those coming. We're excited to see those. We wanted to go over a couple of things this month that'll make cutting, sewing, doing all of this just a little bit easier for you. So we'll go through those. One thing I did want to mention is that this is English paper piecing. It doesn't happen fast. None of this is a race. We're all in this together, and really, if you're having a trouble with it when you first get started for any reason, if you're new to English paper piecing, I really urge you to stick with it and be patient with yourself. You didn't learn how to quilt in a day, despite those videos that claim that you can. You can certainly make a quilt in a day, but you didn't learn how to do that in a day. So this takes some practice and some time to learn that, so be patient with yourselves. And because these are shipping all over the world, please be gracious and patient with each of the shops that are getting those to you, depending on where you've ordered, because it does take a while to get this around the world. I know with it being 2023, we think those things happen instantaneously, but it takes a while, and we're all in this together. There's no ribbon for first place, so don't stress out about that, and really just enjoy it. It's super fun to see people getting their packages ahead of time, not ahead of time, but ahead of you, and seeing what they're doing with it. A lot of people claim that they have, or they saw a certain fussy cutting or something in somebody else's block that they've done and decided to incorporate that into theirs. So be patient with that, and we hope you're enjoying it. Please, if there's something that you would like to see in a future video, we certainly keep tabs on those comments, and we'll try to accommodate that as much as we can. If we're seeing issues, we'll try to accommodate those as well. So today we're going to go over some pro tips. So whether you're new to English paper piecing or seasoned with it, these are some things that we've picked up along the way that make it a more enjoyable, easy experience for you. So I've got my little cheat sheet here of the things that I want to go over today. So this month is month 2. You'll find that in your pattern book. So you'll see we've got month 2, block 2.1 is the first one you're going to start with. And this one is a little bit easier. We've kind of gone back to some simpler blocks. So each month there's kind of a more simple one, and then we get a little bit more complicated. So hopefully 1-2 went well for you. I know a couple of people were confused about how to incorporate these F diamonds into their blocks. So we went over this briefly before, but here's how we would construct that block. If you find that doing those a different way makes better sense for you, that's the other thing about English paper piecing. If you find something that works really well for you, but it's not noted here, I say absolutely go for that. Make it easy and make it work for you. If you like a certain thread or you like a certain needle and it's different than what we're doing, that's totally fine. There are no issues with that whatsoever. So please don't feel like, oh, they said we can't do that. Not that at all. So one thing I did want to mention, and I know we're going backwards just for a brief moment here, is these pieces, when you're attaching, say, this F diamond piece to, I would have made these little hexagons first and then kind of put these together in a long strip and then put these guys in. What you're going to do is you're actually going to bend that triangle, or that diamond, I'm sorry, to get it to go in there. I don't have a great, actually I do, just kidding. We have a great example right here of the way that you're going to do that. So these two pieces were really easy to go together because this one matched this. And so it's real easy to just fold those together, sew them, and those were an easy one. Here you can see it doesn't fold in there super nicely because there's not a seam there. We actually, that was a change from the original Queen of Diamonds. We had those being triangles, and we went, that's a lot of extra work and an extra seam. We could just make this one single diamond, and it's a lot easier to construct. Less cutting, less papers, less seaming, all that sort of thing. So that was where that little change came about, insider secret. So with this, when you go to attach these diamonds to pieces that were easy to fold them together to sew together, you're actually going to be the boss of this triangle, so, or this diamond. And so what you're going to do is you're going to lay it down to that piece first. And I bend these. I literally crease them so that they sit all nice and flat. It's paper. You can't hurt it. I'm a single paper use sort of girl, just because it's a preference. I like them all nice and crisp when I start, but these are meant to be folded. You're the boss of the EPP. So fold it, bend it, it's your, and then you can fold these little dog ears back. And so a quick moment about those is we're going to get into this further down the road. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I really love, this is my little pro tip for the day, is I love Wonder Clips. And so I prefer them over magnets to sew with. Totally my preference. You don't have to agree with it. A lot of people claim that their thread gets stuck on them. I like them because what I do is I take them and I clip my dog ears out of the way. So you can kind of see that I've just taken those. We'll zoom in just a tiny bit for a second here. I take those dog ears so that they don't get sewn into that seam. I clip them together and out of the way, and that way you've got a really simple seam, or your open seam right there without your seam allowance that you're getting into. So then you can just go right on down the way, and let's say that you've completed that sewing and gotten to that end. You just fold it right back out. I just kind of crease that paper back the other way and it lays flat again for you. So no problems whatsoever with that. So that's how you would do those pieces, not only for month 1, but other pieces moving forward. Totally fine. They'll retain their shape. Fabric's not going to get hurt in the bending process. If it bothers you, I totally iron over them at the end because I like them to lay all nice and flat. Again, personal preference. If it doesn't bother you, it's not a big deal. All these papers are going to get taken out at the end, so whether it happens now or later, totally fine. One thing to mention with those papers is if you are going to be, all of these papers are going to get taken out when you get to the point of attaching the Mick Jaguar, we call them the inside border, and then the outside border, the sashing that is done in the white fairy flakes. All of these are going to get taken out. So if you want to go that step now, once all of these pieces are sewn together and all the pieces that are going to need to be inside one another, you can totally take those papers out now, press it flat. One thing that might be a good idea is once your block is done, you could run a little stay stitch, just 1/8 of an inch in, all the way around these by machine, these bias edges, just so that they're not stretching, because you're probably going to stick it in, you know, a box or whatever your preferred method of storage is for a while and leave it there. I would run that little stay stitch around each of these blocks just so that that bias doesn't start to stretch on you until we get ready to attach the Mick Jaguar borders. That is something that we're going to be covering in great detail when we get to that. My method of thought with this pattern was that we would do all the blocks and then get to that. If you can't stand it and want to skip ahead, you can skip to that. I believe it's page 66. We'll find out how well I know the pattern right here. But there are full instructions. Yeah, 66, full instructions on how to do that in the back if you really just don't want to wait. But that's something that we'll be doing really comprehensive videos about in the future. So stick with us for that. So welcome to month 2. We did a brief little recap of things with that. But the only real difficulty with this, again, you're just going to bend these J pieces just the way I just showed you to get them to attach into these. Again, we've given some preferences for the way that we would construct this block. That's the beauty of EPP, is that you can do it any way that makes the most sense to you. So the one thing I did want to go over in this block really quickly are these B pieces. The B's are the little trapezoids. I think these are trapezoids. We're revisiting 8th grade geometry. In cutting these are meant to be fussy cut, semi-fussy cut. Some people, I've seen them, they're phenomenal overachievers and really wanted to go to make the ladybugs line up to one another. We'll go over aggressive fussy cutting, let's call it, in a future video. But for the sake of today's purposes, we just really wanted those to go so that it looks like through those two pieces, those ladybugs are going in a continuous line. Some are not going this way, some are not going this way. That happens on the wide back, but not in the 44-inch wide fabric. So we're going to go over really briefly. We've given some pro tips in the pattern of how to align those fabrics. And so I'll just give you a brief demonstration of that. So I'm a super, super visual person. I have a hard time listening to directions. I'm much better about watching them being done. So what I am going to do with this is I'm going to take my B template. We talked a little bit in the first video about using washi tape on your templates. You can do that, you cannot. Some people like the template grips. It really doesn't matter. Again, whatever's your personal preference is totally fine. So we've given a video or a little diagram in the pattern of how those are going to lay out. And so I lay out my fabric exactly as it's shown in there, because then I can go, oh, okay, this one was, let's see here. Again, here's where my visual nature comes in. So I'm going to align the bottom one, and this we're going to zoom in a little bit on. Because of the nature of the video, it might be backwards for you. Just keep that in mind, but this is how you're going to do that. So I'm going to reference my diagram in there. And so it essentially shows one of these ends lining up parallel with the ladybugs. So here's the other brilliance of fussy cutting. You can lay them out wherever you want them. This particular one, you could choose whether you wanted them to all be the same color, different colors, you wanted them to do that gradation. Same principles apply for this. But what I've also done is I've got my right sides together with this. And so I think, I didn't test this, so bear with me if it doesn't work. We're gonna give it a whirl on live video, which is a dangerous proposition. But what I'm gonna do is these, let me show you in the pattern, these little, that line, or this side, either of these sides of your template are gonna run parallel with those ladybugs. So I'm gonna align them on there. And because I have this was a trick we learned, or we taught last month in month 1 with the stripes, is that if you put these fabrics wrong sides together and you cut both of them, because of the nature of this, you're gonna end up with one that's a mirror image of the other. So then you don't have to do this 4 times, you only have to do this 2 times. So I'm all about expediting the process here. So we're gonna find out if this particular one is gonna work. It works with the stripes, but we're gonna find out if it works with these ladybugs. I'm pretty sure that it will. So bear with me through the magic of video. And voila. You have 2 just like that, because I cut them wrong sides together, that they are a mirror image of one another. So that worked out beautifully. Now, are the colors a complete mirror image? Pretty close. I'm okay with it. But everything, then they're all going the exact same direction. So that works really well for that. And then for the second set of those, I'll just repeat the same exact process. Yes, so these are these left 2, and then you'll do the same thing for the right 2, and you'll end up with 4 identical pieces. So that's my little tip and trick for that guy. And then the other thing with this particular block is we sent you an entire selvage to selvage piece of these little fluffy clouds. And these were meant, as you can see, if you're not familiar with this print, it gradates from dark at the selvage to, let's roll it out this way. Yep, there you go, you can see. So dark at one selvage, dark at the other, and it goes to the lightest color. So in order to use this print most effectively, what I would do is open this up just like this. That way you can see exactly where those colors gradate. I don't know that I would go to town with the wrong sides together plan with this. You certainly could, because it actually gradates at equal increments from the center. Not all ombres do that, but this one you'd probably be safe doing that. So let's say that you wanted to live life dangerously and go that route. You could do the exact same thing. So take your A template that you need here, and you could cut 2 here and 2 next door, and that'll give you 4 of those that will be completely identical, because it's the same distance away from the center, which is sort of the dividing line of repeat to repeat. We'll call it the equator. This is just a whole math and science lesson today here in quilting. So anyway, that's the way to do that. You'll see that some of these are the same. These 2B pieces are from the exact same fabric as these A and J pieces. They're just cut from a different part of that fabric. So that will help you achieve those pieces if you want to achieve them just the same way that we've drawn in the pattern. If you find a different way to do it, I'm all ears. So moving on to block 2-2, we got into a little bit more fussy cutting with this. There are a few more pieces in this block. Don't be intimidated. You have all of the foundation to English paper piece. As Tula was saying this week, once you've learned how to cut and baste. And so you really, those are all the 3 things that you need to do this and be successful. So same principle is going to apply here. So you're going to bend I would sew these F to F, and then bend, you know, this first outer F diamond piece, you're going to lay it over this one, and then sew to that center, knot off at that inside center so that everything's secure. If we haven't mentioned that before, it's a good practice to get into, to knot off at every beginning and end termination point. That way, if a stitch does pop, then you don't have any issues. You can only go so far before you hit another end point. And then you're going to fold that diamond in half so that you can get it to, just fold it right like we did this guy, to get it to a line so that you can sew it down to this one. So really quickly, in the center of this, we've fussy cut, and you got a generous cut of this Kabloom fabric because we really loved this bumblebee. So we're gonna just drape this across here. So if you don't like the bumblebee, let's say that you're allergic to bees, you can use any other part of this that you so desire. The thinking with that was that this diamond piece gave a good sort of focal point to focus on a different piece of that fabric that really makes a big impact. So that's kind of what we were going for there. Like I said, if you like a different piece better, totally fine. And you can go with that. Now, let me organize my bits and pieces here so I can show you another little trick for our sons. And these were, we'll call them semi-aggressive fussy cutting pieces here. So somebody in the group had a really fabulous tip, and I decided to put washi tape on these because I lose them all the time if they're just clear. And so she had a great tip to make the same shape, the same color. That way, whether it's the big one or the small one, you know that you're looking for a triangle or a diamond, or all my triangles are green and my hexagon is white sparkles. So that was a fun tip. So whomever that was, thank you for that. It was a valuable one. So for this one, we're going to take our C pieces. See, mine are, I washi tape the back of them. So sometimes I have to do a little, which way's up? I love these little, what are these called? The ultra fine point Sharpies. I use them for a lot of different things in quilting. It's surprising because you wouldn't typically want a permanent marker near your fabric. I use these for marking templates. And because these are acrylic, I'm a mom, and so I have 11,000 wet wipes lying around our house because kids are always grimy and sticky. And so they actually work really well for wiping your ultrafine tip Sharpie off your template. So it makes it a temporary solution to be able to mark your fussy cuts on it and then wipe them off later. Dry erase also does the trick. So whichever you happen to have lying around is totally good for that. So really quickly, because we're going to call this our semi-aggressive fussy cutting, we are really wanting to highlight this shape of this little rising rainbow sun so that it almost makes this center look like it's glowing or emanating from the inside, was our goal with that. And so this is really easy. You'll be amazed at how easy this is. So you're going to take your C template. The way that those, and again, I'm just going to follow everything. This is marked in the little pro tip in the pattern as well on how to do that. But here's the visual for you visual friends like me. So I take my template. Yep, we're good to go. Let me move this over out of the way. We'll talk about this in just a minute here. So I take my template and I live on the edge, and I really just eyeball these, and I'm a pretty good guess at eyeballers. So I'm going to mark the center. So when these come to the center, they come to a really, really dark purple. Let me move this over just a little bit. A dark purple spot in the center. And then I'm just going to mark this like upper ray that comes out. So that's where I know my center is. And so I need 6 of these little boogers. And so the key to this is just making sure that you hold that. And I violated my own advice, and the whole reason I put the washi tape on there was so that it wouldn't slip. So I'm just going to cut right around all of these, and as long as you mark that spot, these will end up in the exact same place every single time. So now the one thing that I will mention that I've had to remember, it's not even an issue. I won't call it an issue. But because of the thickness of the acrylic, if you happen to be standing and like off to one side when you mark it or cut it, you're going to think that that's maybe not dead center of where that template is, because you're almost seeing like the it's not a reflection, but you'll know what I mean if you try this out. And so whenever you're marking and cutting these, you want to be sitting sort of at the same place where you're going to be cutting those when you're marking them, so that you get them in exactly the same spot. It happens more with like bigger prints where you'll see that they, like if I were fussy cutting these little, whatever these are, caperberry floral thingies. I'm sure that's not their technical name, but today it is. Where you'll see a little bit of a distortion. So if you're doing that, where it's highly critical that those end up in exactly the same spot every time, and you just want to mark them the same orientation that you're going to cut them, so that you're not off at an angle and seeing the side of that. So those should be really easy to achieve with that. The other pieces for that are really straightforward. The last one that I wanted to mention is these stripes, and we went through this a little bit last week. It's my favorite hack because while I'm pretty good visually, I'm sort of spatially challenged, and so I have to literally like sit and study. Even though it's our own pattern, I have to study it and go, wait, which way do those stripes go? So instead of having to, again, make this like 12 times, you only have to do this 6 times, or 1 if you pay attention to what you're doing the first time. If you're comfortable and you have a good rotary cutter, you could even double this over, whatever, 3 times. You can do the math. And that way you're cutting 4 at once versus 2 at once, and you only have to do it, you have to do it even fewer times. So in case you missed it last month, let me put this away so I don't draw on this fabric. This is when you don't want the Sharpies around the fabric. Is these little tiny stripes are perfect because you can fold them over. This is the same cut that you've gotten. So you've got your 9" by width of fabric piece. And what I do is I take those pieces, and it might be difficult. I'm going to fold this down so that you can see. Is you take the stripes and you align the other one on the other side so that they are exact. You don't need to be super neurotic about it, but be a little bit neurotic about it and make sure that they're not, if they're helter-skelter and going the other way, you're going to have problems. But if they're aligned right on top of each other, and I sometimes just use my little fingernails to get it to move over if you need just a titch. And so again, same thing. We showed this as the pro tip in the pattern, but I'll go over it visually here too. So what you want is, this is going to look backwards to you, but no, it's okay. Okay, so the key to this one was that you want one of those stripes to go right down. You're going to align it with the center seam line of your F diamond piece. And so I lay that down, and because you were going to have to use reverse of those. So because you've got these pieces already reversed, you're cutting the reverse at the same time you're cutting the initial orientation, if that makes sense. So let me show you how this goes. Just going to zip right around here. And I always hold this in exactly the same spot. I like these particular rotating mats because they rotate really nicely, and sometimes I stand up, but they're on ball bearings, and so you can just hold that template down once and cut all the way around. So the way that you can check to make sure that this has worked is you're going to fold those back out, lay them down, and if your stripes are aligned the way that they're going to align, let me hold these up for you, in that pattern, if they meet up, then you've got it correct. So you're good. And that's the beauty of cutting those stripes wrong sides together, so that you end up with the reverse without having to do the mental gymnastics of cutting the reverse. So I hope that helps with those. And then you just do that 5 more times and you've got all 12 of those pieces. So that should be pretty easy. Those are the blocks for this month. So we'll be showing tips and tricks for month 3 coming up in another 4 weeks. So we talked about the stripes, and then any errata or pattern mishaps. We went through this thing, I don't even know how many times, more times than I'd like to admit, to try to catch any typos or issues. try as you might, the best way to find out about those is to send it out into the world, and that happened. So thank you for helping us bring those issues to our attention. And so we're aware of a few of those. You can find those. Oh, I was going to show you how to sew this. So let me rethread my needle while I'm telling you about that. All of those are on our website under the Queen of Diamonds tab, and then it will say errata, E-R-R-A-T-A. And you can find any updates to the pattern there. And we've also listed those in the Queen of Diamonds from Free Spirit Facebook group. I believe they're under media or files. I think they're under files. So if you have any trouble, we are aware of a few little issues with that. Those are in there. And then one other thing that I would like to discuss is we are shipping out the additional paper pieces that we found out that you were short to Free Spirit directly. They are putting those, if you are a Block of the Month participant, in your month 4 package. So if you're a shop, those are coming to you in the packages ready to ship to your customer. If you purchased your paper pieces outside of a Block of the Month and you've already signed up on our website for those additional paper packs, we have those. If you're a shop and you're requesting those, we really just need to do it once so that we don't end up with a bunch of duplicates. So if you're a shop, you can request those if you're planning on distributing those to your customers. But if you're an end user, you can sign up on our website if you haven't already to receive those additional small pack of papers for those, and we'll be shipping those in the next month. So you've got some time before you need those. They happen much further into the Block of the Month, so don't stress out about that. And then I wanted to go over one other tip that I have for these pieces. So because this is an intermediate hybrid construction, we called it, there are a few kind of quirks to the way that English paper piecing happens when you're going to be adding borders by machine to this. So again, we are going to be going over this in much, much more depth once we get through all of these blocks. But if you are ahead and want to know how this is going to work, we're going to give you just a couple of tips. So this is the block from month 1. We're going to pretend it's just a good example for this. So I've sewn this seam onto it. So this corner here is an outside edge. This corner here is an outside edge, as is this one. And so as a good rule of thumb for English paper piecing is you always want to clip those dog ears out of the way. I remember when I was just starting English paper piecing, I was like, God, they're always in the way. I want them out. And so I wanted to cut them. Please, please don't ever cut them, or you will have much bigger problems on your hands. But you really just fold them out of the way. Again, it's fabric, it'll fold. You don't need to have an issue with that. So this guy, I'm going to finish sewing this seam. Again, we're going to fold him in half, and this is kind of halfway done because I was using it as an example. So this piece, again, I really like the little Wonder Clips for this because since I sew with these, this is my cue to, this is where I'm going to end up. And so whenever I clip a seam together, I always put my Wonder Clip at the end of where I want to go. That way I'm not accidentally sewing the wrong seam. But also it holds those little guys out of the way. So I've only got about an inch here. We're going to snake through this just really quickly, so bear with me. Oops, helps if you don't pull it all the way through. There we go. It's not off. If you happen to have broken your fabric or your thread in the middle of a seam, this is just another pointer. If that happens to you, it's not a big deal. I would start just about in ½ an inch back, and I just sew right over that seam and continue on going. So if that happens, just go right in, continue on, not off that new thread so that it's really well secured there. But then you can just keep on right on going. So I'm going to do sloppy stitches here just so that I can get to this end and show you what's going to happen there. But the gist of it is you just want to keep those dog ears, and I hope, yeah, it looks like you guys can see this okay. You want to keep those dog ears out of the way so that they don't get sucked up in the seam, because when you open these, you want them to lie as flat as possible. Now, if you've sewn at all or quilted, I'm sure that you've had a seam in a quilt where all of them were supposed to lay nice and open, and you get all the way to the end and they don't. So the situation with that, so I've got one more stitch until I get to the end of that seam. I think you can see this okay. I'm trying to look in the camera and pay attention to what I'm doing here. So I'm going to take this little seam and hold that dog ear out of the way. Same thing with this. And so then you're going to get that exact end point. And so that's where I'm going to come through those seams. Now, if you sew through all 4 layers of that, this is not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm just going to knot this off so that we can demonstrate what happens when you, well, hold on, when you open that up. If you sew through all 4 of those, you're just going to have one single stitch that ends up in your seam allowance. Again, not a big deal. It happened to me a lot of times when I was making this first quilt. So I'm going to snip that off. And now that these are sewn together, let's pretend like we're taking these apart. And so I just pull my seams up, pull your papers out. And forgive me, one of these was a 1/4 inch template because we started as that and realized it's just too skinny. So forgive the skinny man here on the edge. But you're gonna pull these papers out. And that guy, and that's where watching Tula's video about those seams nesting is an important thing, because when you get them on the inside, you really want them to lay down as much as possible next to one another. So what's going to happen, I don't have an iron, so we're going to pretend like we're doing this. So you'll see that these seams open right up and they almost nest there because you've made them, here's the view of the back side. You've made them all, this one goes this way, this guy goes that way, and this guy goes this. And so they should make a nice little seam there. When we, and forgive this is not the world's best example because this guy has a shorter seam allowance, but pretend like he's the same length as these others. Now, if you end up with a little pucker there, it's not a big deal. We're going to sew over that line when we put the sashing on. So don't stress out about that. It's not a big deal. I had at least 20 of those when I sewed this quilt. And what we're going to recommend, and the sort of other inside trick to this, I don't have an iron to iron this out flat right now, but the other trick to this is when we put those Mick Jaguar borders on, we're going to use this line that we wrapped around the paper as your seam allowance, because that's it should be a 3/8 inch seam allowance, which is perfect because then you have got that and you can follow that. So as long as you've sewn right up to that line, you're a-okay. So don't stress out about those things. Again, we'll go through any troubleshooting with those when we get ready to attach those, but that should help you. Just don't, if you can avoid it at all, don't suck in all 4 layers of that. Pull them back so that you just get 2 at a time, and then you're not sewing through your seam allowance. If it happens, don't worry about it. You're gonna be totally fine. Don't go undoing all these blocks, because there's an easy way to fix this. We're sewing over it. Like I said, I'm sure that with machine quilting, you've gotten a seam that was supposed to go this way and it accidentally got sewn down this way. I love these little Tula Pink. They're the micro ring tip scissors, and they're great because this tip is so skinny and sharp, and it's actually a great measuring tool because this is approximately 1/4 inch. And so what you can do is you can just go and snip that seam so that it'll lay the way you need it to. Let's say that you basted these and the one goes the wrong way. Just snip the other side. Like, let's pretend that that's this guy and he needed to go towards the other direction. I'm just going to snip him, and you can fold him right and iron him down to go the other way if your seam nested the wrong way and you want it to lie a little flatter. Simple, simple. So don't stress out about that. The one quick thing is, in case some of you are wondering, this is what's called a lap app. They're phenomenal little tools. I've got like 5 of them now. We had these custom made with the Tula Pink Whisper Fairy Dust print. So these are available in our shop. And what's great about these is you can put all of your little spools of thread under here. This adjusts this way and this way, so you can move it, you can tilt it and raise and lower it. And if you're traveling, it's great because it can sit in your lap on an airplane. You don't have to be trying to reach the tray in front of you, or if the guy in front of you is sticking it way back, it's not in your throat. And then it's pretty cool because they've got a little needle holder on that, so that'll hold your needle. And then the little pocket here holds your scissors. And the last super exciting part of these is that if you are basting pieces, it's got a sandpaper pad on the top. So if you put your paper pieces on there and you're gluing or basting or whatever you're doing, they won't slide away, which is super nice. And then this is a heat resistant little cover that it's got that goes back on. And so I love it because I do most of my English paper piecing actually sitting in bed once my kids finally go to sleep for the day. So it's great because it raises it up so that there's not so much strain on your neck and shoulders. So that's my favorite sewing and English paper piecing tool is definitely that. So we hope you have more fun this month. Feel free to shout out on the Facebook group if you have any trouble or would like us to cover something next month. We'd be happy to try to oblige that. But have fun, enjoy, and we can't wait to see what you make.